There is a reason why you feel like work sucks. There's a reason why you have so much resistance to going to work. There's a reason why you downward spiral and you become depressed and you have this loop of up and down, janky, the sky is the limit, and then plummet all the way to the floor, to rock bottom. There's a reason your productivity looks like this. And it's because you do not understand capacity. And if you do not understand and respect your capacity, you will never be able to enter what I call the 24/7 flow of fulfillment and power, which is where you want to be. This is where work feels amazing, everything you do feels fulfilling, and you're constantly growing and transforming. And that's where we want to be. But if you do not understand and manage your capacity as somebody with ADHD, it is impossible. This is a hurdle that you need to get out of the way. So lock in. So first, I'd like to say that this video is not going to tell you essentially that you should stop working so hard, or that you should dumb yourself down, or you need to be coddled. That's not what this video is about. I know a lot of you don't want to see ADHD as something that brings you down. You want ADHD to be something that you overcome. You don't want it to be an excuse. Awesome. Great. We're in the same boat. However, I do need to point out something. The fact that, and maybe this isn't true, but for some of you it is, the fact that you think that ADHD is something that you need to overcome doesn't make sense. Because ADHD is not something that you overcome. ADHD is something that you live with. ADHD is just a part of how your system, you, operate. And this is true about reality. Nothing is ever not operating as intended. There really never is problems. Problems kind of don't exist. They're kind of an illusion. Now, obviously, things don't operate as intended. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is that everything is actually always just operating in its capacity to operate at that given moment. So let's get into the different factors of your capacity, and then we can talk more about this. So the way I'm going to define capacity is it's different factors that determine whether or not you are able to and will complete a task, as well as they define how well you're going to complete that task. So if you have low capacity, there's a chance that you might not even pass the check for the task to be completed, or you could have high enough capacity that you do complete the task, but it's very exhausting, very draining, and the ROI is essentially low. And there really wasn't a point in you doing it, because you could have done something better. So let's go over the different parts, or the different factors of your capacity. So first one up, skill. If you do not have the skill, if you do not pass the skill check, then you are not actually going to be able to complete the task that you're trying to do. Let's say you don't know anything about cars, and you're tasked with fixing a car. If you don't have any car skills at all, you're not going to be able to complete this task. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't try anyways and then gain skill from trying and trying to learn. And so sometimes we don't have the capacity of skill to actually complete what we want to do, but we do have the capacity of skill in learning to spend time on that task and learn, and then to just keep doing that. And then eventually we will have the skill for it. So sometimes it can be helpful to just recognize, oh, I don't think I have the skill for this, and I'm not actually doing it to complete it. I'm actually doing it to grow the skill to complete it. And I'm just going to keep throwing myself at this problem, even though I know I don't have the skill to do it, because eventually I will. So that's skill. Another one is resources. A really good example here is money, but this is not just money, this is everything. This could be food, this could be relationships, it could be your network, whatever it is. But you don't always have enough resources to complete a certain action. If you had infinite money, there's a lot of possibilities of things that you could do. Like your capacity and power grows a lot if you have a lot of money. Things that would have been very difficult or slow, or basically had a low ROI, which is return on investment, what you get for what you put in. Or you may just not be able to do those things at all if you don't have enough money. But if you have enough money, then certain things become valuable and worth it, because the money is doing the heavy lifting, solving the problem. If you don't have money, but let's say you need something coded, right? Then it's like you have to grow the skill, and then that would enable you to pass the check of whether or not you're going to complete the task. If you're trying to code something, for example, versus hiring a developer. Okay, the next one is energy. This is different from motivation, but they're kind of related. So energy is more physical and cognitive energy levels. So something that I see often, this relates to food, how people will sometimes eat and they don't realize that after they eat, their cognition and their energy basically tanks because their body is spending so much energy trying to digest. And now not everybody is like this, but every single person's system is different. I can oftentimes still work when I'm digesting, but it has to be within my capacity. It has to be at what I can manage at that moment. But a lot of people literally just can't work. Like if they eat, they're just like out of commission for like an hour or two. Same thing with physical exhaustion. Sometimes we have a lot of motivation where we're like super ready and willing to do something, but because we're physically exhausted, tired, whatever it may be, we just don't have the energy. We just can't do it. Or it's not that we can't do it. Again, sometimes it's we can do it, but we're going to do such a bad job that there's just no point in doing it. Because when you work outside of your capacity, that's basically what happens, is you get a poor result. That's the rule. If you don't have the capacity for it, you're going to get a poor result. The next factor of capacity is momentum. So there are certain skills that require a certain amount of momentum. And momentum is a principle in productivity and everything in general. An object in motion stays in motion, and an object at rest stays at rest. If you don't have enough momentum for the certain task that you're doing, then it's not going to go well. Some tasks require high momentum. Some tasks are actually better performed at a mid amount of momentum, and some tasks are best performed at a low amount of momentum. An example of a task that's performed well at low momentum is strategy, because this is when you're going to have the most clear and calculating thoughts, is when you're not caught up in this emotional world. And you're able to like slowly thread through things and think of all of the different scenarios and options that could happen. So this is really good for a strategy session. And I want to stop for a moment to talk about capacity's relationship with momentum. When you work outside of your capacity, you get a bad result. And this reinforces the belief that you are bad. And then when you believe you're bad, your ego essentially exists to confirm your identity. And what happens is this causes spiraling, and it causes you to actually start to act like what you believe. So you get a bad result because you worked outside of your capacity. Now you think you're a loser. And because you think you're a loser, you start to act like a loser. And then you downward spiral, and you're back into all of your addictions, and life just kind of sucks again. And so this is really the main reason why you downward spiral. And this is the main reason why you backslide, and it's the main reason why things are bad. Like, honestly, this is why you get depressed. This is why these bad things happen. It's because you work outside of your capacity. If you have a ton of momentum and then you run into a brick wall, it's like, ow, it hurts. That's what operating outside of your capacity is like, especially when you have ADHD, because we are more sensitive just in general, and especially to external stimuli. But when you work within your capacity, what happens is that you grow momentum. You cultivate momentum through substitution. So if you realize, okay, I don't actually have the capacity to be doing what I want to do right now, what can I substitute for that instead that is still productive? And sometimes the answer is just straight up taking a break or taking a nap or watching TV. But typically, if you watch like one episode of TV and then that sort of fills you up and you have more dopamine in your system, which we're very sensitive to, and then it sort of allows you to get back into the other task and you can actually complete it now, versus you trying to complete the task, getting really pissed off, getting really frustrated, it's super draining, then you just quit, and then you basically spiral, and then you watch like a whole 2 hours of show. And now you've basically just given yourself task trauma, so you have resistance to returning to the task, and you feel like a loser, and you're kind of acting like one. And it just doesn't feel good. Another factor of capacity is your emotions. Sometimes you are too emotional to be working on a certain task. Now, the thing about emotions is that in our culture, and I think just globally, we kind of idolize them. We kind of see them as like this really important, like the fruit of the soul or something. Maybe that's true in like socialization or art or things like that, but that is absolutely not true for work. In general, like the general rule of thumb is that emotions are not your friend when you are working. Sometimes they can be. There is such a thing as productive emotions, but what I find is that emotionality, whether it be good or bad, basically just makes you impulsive and make poor decisions and have poor mental clarity. So a principle of your productivity is that you're always sort of trying to return to a sort of emotionless state where you actually kind of do just want to act like a robot, like a drone, at least when you're at work. And the thing to understand here about the emotions is, like I said, they're not always bad. Sometimes you have a surge of emotions that makes you feel like very strong, like you're Superman or something. And then it's actually a good idea to capitalize on that and to allow those feelings to give you momentum to get some work done. So emotions are not always bad, but generally they're not good. You're always kind of trying to return back to a motionless state. It's very good to have like a low level positive feeling. That's very conducive for flow. If you just have like an underlying positive emotion, whether it be like victory or like peacefulness or a meditative kind of state, whatever it is. But sometimes you're just too emotional, you're too pissed off, you're gonna spiral, just like don't do it. Take a break, get a snack, do something else. Work on something a little bit easier than the thing that you're going to try and work on. Okay, so motivation. And this is very, very important. So motivation is essentially the amount of dopamine in your system. And so the thing about ADHD and why capacity is so important for you to really grasp and to really become skillful at managing it is because ADHD motivation and really all of the parts of our capacity, because kind of due to how our system works, like really all of the parts, is kind of like playing a slot machine. A normal person has a little bit more of a stable capacity in all areas. Normal people still have to manage their capacity, but if you have ADHD, it's much, much, much more important for you to manage it because what you have is basically these wild highs and ups and downs. And if you don't manage it, this is what your life is going to look like. And this is very draining. It's exhausting. And like we talked about earlier, it reinforces a negative identity that you have about yourself, which makes you take worse actions. And this is basically a downward spiral. And it really just interrupts your growth. So what we want to do is we want to manage our capacity very well so that instead of having this, we can have something a little bit more like the normal person's, where it's like a calm up and down, where on the downs, we're gaining momentum. And then on the ups, it's like we are feeling calm, we're feeling good, we're feeling okay. And then on the downs, we're still gaining momentum. Or it's like something right here might be you like taking a strategy break, where it's like, okay, you know what? I'm kind of stressed. I'm a little bit overstimulated. I'm going to do some deep breathing. I'm going to sit here for like 10 minutes and I'm just going to kind of think about what I'm doing and I'm going to kind of think about the problem. And then within those 10 minutes, you realize something and you have like a mental chemical reaction that like gives you some dopamine. And it's like, okay, dive back in. And then what you just did there is you actually gained momentum. And so if you do this over a long time, what's going to happen is you're just going to go up because all of these things, you know, your progress stacks and reinforces itself and multiplies against itself. Like the skill of learning makes you learn faster. And so you can learn faster about how to learn. Or when you're building something, you know, the systems you build make things easier, which allows you to save time, which you can then use to build more systems that save you more effort and time. That's kind of what we want to be. We want to be on this upward multiplying spiral. But in order to do that, you have to manage your capacity and you have to be okay with these low points. You can't be like trying to be Superman and like blasting through everything. Okay, so the next factor is going to be bio needs. Well, it's your biological needs. Did you get enough sleep? Have you had enough water? Did you forget to eat today? Because oftentimes the other parts of your capacity are going to be determined by your bio needs. And one of these things that is ADHD specific is the fact that we have sensory sensitivities. And so you might be overstimulated or you might be understimulated, and that's really going to hurt your capacity. And I'd kind of classify that as part of your bio needs, is understanding, okay, where am I at with the stimulation right now? Am I understimulated? Am I overstimulated? What's going to be a good task for me to work on within that framework? We oftentimes forget to eat and drink water, especially if we're depressed. But, you know, if you don't eat, sometimes what will happen is you'll get hangry, where it's like in the middle of the day, you just realize you're very angry at everything and you don't really know why. You're just super emotional. And then it's like, oh, wait, I haven't eaten for the last like 8 hours. And your body's like, hell no, I don't want to do this. But you won't actually feel hungry, right? Another example is like, when you're hyper focused and you're like unaware of the fact that you've basically had to piss for like the last 30 minutes. Due to the sensory sensitivities, it's almost like your whole body is on fire and it's like making you really overstimulated, but you don't realize it because you're hyper focusing. And so when you're hyper focusing, there's not much you can do about that. There is if you follow a Pomodoro and you like do a self check-in on the short breaks, which is what I recommend people to do. But it's very important for you to take care of your biological needs, food, sleep, water. Do you have to go to the bathroom? Take care of those things first, then get to work. And the last factor of capacity is clarity. So if you don't have enough clarity as to what it is you're actually trying to do, it's not going to get done. And in another sense, if you don't have enough clarity to actually see what you're doing clearly, for example, if you think you're doing something the right way, but there's actually a much better way to do it and you're basically doing it like a bad way, if you're going about it the wrong way and you don't know any better, like this is obviously going to have a major effect, and you're going to find out the hard way, like, oh, this really sucks because I didn't have clarity on what I actually needed to do. I thought that I was competent enough. I thought I was capable, and I wasn't. It wasn't within my capacity. And so now it's taking way longer. It's pissing me off. It's making me sad. And this can lead to a downward spiral, which you don't want. So this is sort of like the invisible killer. You always kind of need to be thinking about the fact that you don't know how much clarity you have. In fact, you genuinely cannot really tell. You can make a guesstimate, and you don't ever need crystal clear clarity because you're never going to have crystal clear clarity. That's like not real. But you always need like at least enough to know what you're getting into and to sort of start, right? You can't just launch into something blindly and then expect it to work. It's not going to work. So this one's very important. It's sort of like the red spy in the base. It's gonna sneak up on you and get you when you don't expect it. So you just kind of gotta be on guard. Okay, so those are all the factors of capacity. If you weren't taking notes, which I recommend that you take notes when you're watching my videos, it's going to help you remember these concepts easier. I recommend like stopping and thinking and like rerunning through your head what everything we just talked about was. You can go ahead and pause the video. I'll be here when you get back. But now to kind of wrap this up, what you really need to know is that capacity is sort of just realizing what you're actually capable of by assessing these factors, and then basically choosing tasks or choosing the productive thing to do that is going to actually be in line with your capacity. And we call this the productivity principle of substitution. And the thing to understand about substitution and productivity in general is that productivity is about getting what you want out of life. And so there's no point in living an existence that you feel is hellish for you, and you're just like constantly trying to be disciplined and slay resistance and going crazy, spiraling, workaholic mode, and then crash. It's unrealistic. It's not good. It's not within your capacity. And I've already showed you how that hurts when you're not operating out of your capacity. And so sometimes, and then this could relate to your emotional factor of capacity, is like sometimes substitution just looks like genuinely like taking a nap or like hanging out with your friends and family, playing with your dog, going for a walk. It's not always about trying to cram the most productive thing in, but just doing something that is moving you into the direction of having a life that you want and getting more of what you want out of life. That's what productivity is. And so if it's going to make you happier and make you feel like the highest form of enjoyment that you can have right now is basically just like pumping the brakes a little bit and like watching some TV, then you're being productive. As long as that's actually what you want and you're not just listening to resistance and entropy and it's sort of lying to you. As long as you're getting something out of this, maybe it's growth, maybe it's, self-reflection as you're watching, whatever it may be. A more productive example would be like reading a book or something. So it's like, okay, I'm really pissed off. I don't want to work right now. I'm going to go ahead and take 30 minutes to read this book. Or I'm really tired. I don't think that I can do this task. I don't think I'm like mentally sharp enough or there enough right now to actually do this task. That's very complex. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to make the plan for the task. And I'm going to just sort of like pick through slowly. And I'm going to do it in like a meditative, calm state where my brain can kind of rest. And then that will oftentimes give you momentum to actually launch into the task full force. And so if you can master this managing your capacity and substitution, what's going to happen is you're going to enter what I call the 24/7 flow of fulfillment and power, where you're basically always going up, you're always doing something productive, you're always transforming, and you're always going to feel fulfilled, and you're always going to be doing something to grow your kingdom or cultivate yourself or cultivate the lives of the people around you into something that's better for everybody. All right. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. If you like this content and you want something that's going to motivate you consistently and help you manage your life with ADHD, sort of live to the best of your ability with ADHD, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. That way the videos get pushed to your feed. And if you liked it, drop a like and let me know something that you do already to manage your capacity down in the comments below. Also, there's a link in the description to have one-on-one coaching sessions with me. Right now, I'm doing it for absolutely free until I get enough reviews to start charging money for it. So you can actually have weekly sessions with me for absolutely free right now. But all right, guys, thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.